Welcome to the podcast, A Drink with Derek. Follow comedian Derek Richards on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and don't forget to subscribe to his YouTube channel and watch all episodes of the podcast. Now grab a drink and join your host, Derek Richards.
Hey guys, Dave Williamson, host of the Meet Dave podcast. I'm up late, putting meat on the smoker, cooking a ton of barbecue for my buddy Bert, for a little going away party before he goes out of town for a while. I thought since he was hosting, I should prepare a rack of ribs specifically for him. I got Uncrustables, one of his favorites, Sour Patch Kids. I got some Tito's I'm gonna spritz it with. I got packets of Kool-Aid. So we're making a very Bert-specific rack of ribs. I don't know if it's gonna be delicious. I don't know if it's gonna be terrible. But we're gonna find out. All right, we're gonna add the cherry Kool-Aid. Ooh, man, I can smell that Kool-Aid. Definitely red Kool-Aid prominently in there. You can see a red in it. I'm just spritzing. You can tell which ones are the Kool-Aid ones. Little Tito's. Woo! What do you think this is gonna work? Uncrustable. Feel good, like a reduction. Uncrustable to kind of mesh in with the barbecue sauce. Alright, there's our Uncrustables barbecue sauce. Put it on here. Just to see chunks of Uncrustables in there. Finishing touch. Sprinkle crushed up Sour Patch Kids. There it is. The Bert Special. I took a bunch of ingredients that I knew Bert really likes and I incorporated them into the rack of ribs. It might be disgusting. It might be the greatest thing that Bert's ever eaten. I don't know.
Are there Big Macs in there?
We're gonna find out.
Wait, Tito. It's
Garlic.
Cigars.
He does like cigars. Oh, there's definitely Xanax in here. I'm getting some sincere hints of something.
Yeah. All right. First question: is it gross or good?
It's good. It's
Okay.
really good.
What? I wanted to do it. Okay. The toast?
Dave, I can't tell. What is it?
I took several packets of cherry Kool-Aid and I put it into the roll. Instead of using apple cider vinegar to spritz it with, I used Tito's vodka. I took Uncrustables and I pureed it and did a low reduction barbecue sauce with the Uncrustables in the barbecue sauce.
That's what I'm tasting.
And then
peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
you're gonna like this one. I chopped up Sour Patch Kids and crumbled them on top.
Wow. Well, everyone's gonna like this. This is really good.
All of Bert's favorites.
Wait.
Kool-Aid ribs. Kool-Aid Sour Patch Uncrustable vodka ribs. I have the video. I'll be posting it. This is what they look like.
Okay.
Well, it's really interesting.
It's a good.
How are the Bert branded ribs?
They're fucking awesome. It's like when you go, how did you know what I like?
I wonder.
I talked to your ex-girlfriend and she told me everything.
Hey, it's Derek Richards. Welcome to A Drink with Derek. By the way, check out all the episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud. You can watch them all on YouTube. Just type in A Drink with Derek. You can catch them on Pandora as well. But the most important thing is the sexy man I have in front of me right now, whom you just saw leading into this chunk here, comedian Dave Williamson, who started off in South Florida, working in his family's car business. We'll get to that here in a second. Ended up on stage where I first met you down in South Florida.
Yep.
When we were both living down there at the time. And you have just absolutely been kicking ass. He's been in the San Francisco Comedy Competition, Big Sky Comedy Festival, Boston Comedy Festival, World Series of Comedy, several others. Named the best comedian in Miami, decided to pack up a travel trailer with his family, go on the road for 18 months, end up in Los Angeles. I can't wait to hear about that story. He is on the road as a headliner, also goes on the road and opens up for Bert Kreischer, who is hysterical. He's got a couple of albums on his website. His latest is called Trying My Hardest. DaveWilliamson.com is his website. Grab both of those albums. They are hysterical. He is obsessed with barbecue. I'm obsessed with barbecue. And we're going to get to this here in a second because you decided you have your own podcast now called Meet Dave. And we'll get to all this stuff here in a second. But first off, great to see you. It's been way too long.
Dude, 100%, man. I was so happy to hear from you, Derek, when you reached out and asked me to do this because, your name pops up all the time between all the South Florida boys. And I'm always like, man, I should hit up Derek. I miss him. I haven't been working Vegas the past, obviously year or two. So I haven't had really an excuse to hit you up for lunch or anything. So, and dude, you've always been, honest to God, a dude we all look up to, man. And when we all started grinding down in South Florida, you were already doing it, So, and you were always so nice and kind to us too, man. So you're boys him up for sure.
Well, you guys and your crew, I mean, everybody down there, yourself, Forrest Shaw, John Wynn, several others, Carl Remy. I mean, some of the names that pop into my head as just when I think of South Florida comedy, when I was there, that core group of people, just solid, funny people, hysterical, busted your ass, and you've all done exceptionally well. And I'm happy. I'm really happy for you that this has, again, so many questions I want to ask you. First off, you got into this whole barbecue thing. Before we go any further, all right, I pulled this out of my fridge. Is this decent or what should I do? Is it garbage?
No, I got to tell you, Sweet Baby Ray's is very corporate. It's very everyone's got Sweet Baby Ray's in their fridge. And I think the answer to a lot of people would expect is, oh, yeah, Sweet Baby Ray's, it's generic, whatever. But Sweet Baby Ray's is popular for a reason. It's a very trustworthy barbecue sauce. And I actually prefer it when I cook ribs because I don't put a lot of sauce on stuff after the cook. I like to just eat the meat. It's like putting cream or sugar in your coffee. I want to taste the coffee. Same thing with barbecue. I don't like to put a lot of sauce after, but certain things like pork belly burn ends or pork ribs, I will slightly sauce them during the cook. And then, the smoke keeps hitting them. And by the time they're done, it's kind of congealed into the meat.
Kind of caramelized and gotten into the meat. Exactly.
That's the word.
I just changed it. This is now Sweet Baby Dave's.
Oh, God willing. I wish I had the Sweet Baby Ray's money, dude. I wish it was Sweet Baby Dave's.
But Sweet Baby Ray's people, pay attention. This guy knows what he's doing.
I'm coming for you, Sweet Baby Ray. But Sweet Baby Ray's is a good barbecue sauce for actually putting on during the cook because it's already got that perfect texture and thickness that really lays in good when you want it to caramelize.
Now, do you make your own barbecue sauce? I would imagine you do.
That's one thing I have not really dove into. I've messed around with it a little bit. Like that clip that we watched, I kind of messed around with the sauce there a little bit as part of that joke. But I haven't really dove into it. But I have a lot of friends that do, and I've started asking questions recently because I think that might be my next little foray into this barbecue culture.
Well, I want to back up here for a second because your career started off when I met you. You were in your family's car business.
Correct.
Now, what were you doing for the family's car business down in South Florida?
So my family's been in the car business for generations. My grandpa started one of the first Cadillac dealerships in Miami. And, it was just kind of I thought that was my path. So I started at the beginning. When I was 14, man, I was cleaning the shelves in the stock room. I was working with the mechanics in the body shop all summer long, and I worked my way to every department. I did parts department, service department, sales department. I did everything. And I had just worked my way up to general manager at one of the Saturn stores. We had a few Saturn locations. And then that's when shit hit the fan in 2008 with the economy.
Yeah.
And I had been doing comedy for several years at that point as a hobby, and we're getting some great opportunities. And honestly, my heart was really into comedy and performing and creating. And I liked the car business a lot, but I loved comedy. So that was my opportunity to get it out of my system. And when we shut down the Saturn stores, I talked to my dad, I talked to our business partners, I talked to my wife, and I said, hey, I think I'm going to take a year right now. It's a good transition point, and just try comedy full time. And if I'm going to have a good sample size at that point to know where I stand with it. And, I kind of was hoping that I hated doing comedy, and then that way I could fully invest myself into going into my uncle's store, the Cadillac store, and kind of starting fresh. But a year turned into 3 years, turned into getting in a travel trailer with my family and going around the country. It led to moving to LA, and now that was over a decade ago. I'm still doing comedy.
Now, does the family have do you have siblings that took over this business or that are going to take it over? Or did your dad kind of go, all right, well, this was the end of the line. This was the guy that I was going to pass all this stuff on to. And now he loads up a travel trailer with his family and takes off. I mean, how was the reaction from him? I mean, obviously he's, sad that his son has taken off. I'm sure he wanted to probably keep you going in this direction. Was he supportive of it, or do you think you were out of your mind?
My parents have always been extremely. And my dad and my uncle, who are brothers, obviously, they were partners in the store. So the lineage was my dad and his brother, and then I'm an only child, and my cousin's an only child. So it really was just, pretty straightforward family tree.
Sure.
And my uncle and my cousin are still very involved with the business and still, running a great business in South Florida and for the community and for their employees. And my father retired, and I guess somewhat retired from that line of work to chase another line of work. So it's still in the Williamson name. Hey, look, you never know where life takes us. Maybe if I have huge successes that allow me to invest back in the car business in the future, maybe I will. But for now, I'm very happy doing what I'm doing. And I think that's the most important thing in life, is to spend your days investing in what's going to fulfill you, not just financially or what people expect you to do because, your family's name's on the wall, but what's going to make you happy, when your days are up.
Well, it's always super cool that your parents are supportive, because you don't want to, this business is hard enough as it is without having to swim upstream dealing with the cascading disappointment of parents coming down on you. Yeah. So it's like, all right, look, I got enough rejection in this business as it is. I don't need mom and dad, in my face going, nice job screwing that up. Can't believe you went up and did a one-nighter in Ocala for $35.
Man, those years, I'll tell you what, man, everyone likes to talk about the grind and the struggle and the hard work. And I'm grateful for those years. I'm very grateful for them. But I look at some guys, and look, everyone's path is different. And I don't knock anyone, whatever. But I know for a fact that when I use the word grind, it was a grind. And people are like, oh, your family had a car business. How hard was your life? I go, hey, man, I would get to the car dealership, open it up, work all day long, which is the car business is like 12-hour days if you're lucky, right?
Yeah.
Then I would change my shirt in my office, get in my car, drive to West Palm Beach to MC for Tommy Davidson 3 nights in a row. Sometimes you're there till 3 a.m. in the morning because the shows run long. You got to stay there just to go up and go, hey, everyone, thanks for coming out. Have a good night. And then you get in your car, you drive back home, get 2 hours sleep. The alarm goes off at the dealership the night before, in the middle of the night, because the wind shook a window. Got to go down, deal with the police, sleep for 30 minutes in your car in the parking lot, open the dealership, deal with customers all day, put on a happy face for employees, and then go do it all over again the night before. And then also, like you were saying, those Florida days, man. Yeah, there was weekends. There was times I was driving back and forth from Miami in Naples or somewhere because I was doing stuff at the dealership. I was featuring for someone in Port Charlotte, and I was also coaching a water polo tournament all 2 hours away from each other, you know, trying to be everywhere for everybody. And you're just on fumes, you know. But that's when I think of the grind. That's where I think of is just keeping yourself awake to drive 2 hours across the Everglades to get to the next thing because your bones won't let you turn down a gig.
Well, there's a difference between, and I had a guest on recently who had said there's a difference between passion and obsession, because anybody can be passionate about anything. You know, you can be passionate about playing guitar, but are you obsessed with playing guitar? In other words, you're passionate about playing, but are you obsessed enough to the point where you will go ahead and grab your guitar and drive from Miami to Naples, do a gig, come back, and run the family business all day long, lather, rinse, repeat, and just keep doing that over and over and over again. So I thought that was interesting, that description between the line between passion and obsession.
Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And look, man, there's a difference between humbling yourself and making yourself vulnerable is a buzzword we use a lot in comedy.
Yeah.
So that you can reach your highest potential at certain things versus just showing up and going to. There's some guys who've been doing the same set for 10 years and they don't understand why they're not getting, you know, opportunities. And it's like, because other people are trying new material all the time. And even though they might not crush, you know,
right,
they get that material to where it does crush because they're okay driving to the open mic in you know, Port St. Lucie or whatever, and putting themselves out.
Sure.
And taking them out. There's definitely a difference between, you know, like you said, obsession and passion, but it's not just showing up and going through the motions. That's only half the battle. Now, what do you do with that time once you're there?
Right. No, because some guys go and do sets and do open mics, and they still keep doing the same stuff over and over again.
You know what I think's really underrated too, and this is something I definitely. You're a guy who I saw that did a great job at this, you know, and that I learned from. And I don't think a lot of people in the comedy industry realize this. When you're a young comic, going up and being funny or crushing or whatever, that's only half the battle. You also have to be professional and bookable. So like coming from the business world where I always appreciated my employees and customers who took pride in our dealership. You know, a customer or an employee goes over and pours some coffee at the coffee station, they spill. Do they just leave it there or do they clean it up themselves, right? Or does a manager yell at somebody to sweep something up, or does the manager go grab the broom and go sweep it up himself? And now his employees see that and they want to take the same pride in the right. dealership that guy does. So when I was getting booked to MC at the Improvs, you know, I want to be invested in the show going well. And that's not just telling jokes. That's making sure customers were happy. We turned the room on time. The wait staff wasn't burned out so they could take care of the customers. So I go out there and help bust tables, you know, and I'd see some comics. You're an MC. You've been doing this for a year and they're in there like ordering steak and cocktails in between shows when the people are busy. Like, hey man, leave them alone. I'd go out there and I'd bust the tables and I would help turn the room because I'm like, hey, man, I'm invested in this being a good show. And I think a manager sees that and goes, hey, man, Dave's funny. This other guy's equally as funny. But if I'm going to book anyone, I'm going to book Dave because he makes my life easier. Whereas this guy might talk too much in the green room, piss the headliner off, make my job harder, you know?
Right.
So, you know, that's a big part of it.
It's a huge difference. I mean, yeah, because I don't say anybody can be funny. There's a lot of us that are funny, but it's, yeah, what's the difference? What's going to separate you from the rest of the pack? And that's one thing that I had noticed about you as well, was that you had that business acumen. You had that ability to relate to other people on not only as a personal level, but as someone who, like yourself, you're part of running a business and you see somebody else running a business. And this is a business you want to get into. And if somebody came in and they were working at your car dealership and they were going, you know what, let me run this paperwork over to the bank. And that's one thing you didn't have to do. So you're like, you know what, this guy is going to get a better bonus come Christmas time. Yeah,
he's going to be appreciated. That's for sure. He's valuable, you know?
Right. No, absolutely. Now you work with Bert Kreischer quite a bit. How did that relationship start and evolve?
You know, in South Florida, I just got booked to feature for him randomly at, you know, certain weekends. And, you know, it's funny. Like, I remember, you start seeing the same faces over and over again on the improv, calendars, and you get to know the guys who are their headliners. And
Sure.
I had seen Bert for a few years on different calendars, and he was one of the few guys who I never met. And then one weekend at the West Palm Improv, I got matched up with him, and so I was just opening, and we just hit it off, man. We just really enjoyed hanging out together. And I'm always the guy too that's there for the hang, like I'm professional, and I might have to get up early in the morning to go open the dealership. But if you want to have a beer with me after the show, I'm going to have a beer, and we're going to talk shop, and we're going to, I think the networking is as important as anything, man, And so I just really enjoyed hanging out with him. And so over the years, there was several other times that we just randomly, when I started working the road heavier and committed to being a comic, he was a guy who we just always made sense, the clubs, I guess, lining us up. And, and then, I'd see him in LA once I moved out here. I'd see him at least once a year. He was always very kind and would come and do a live version of his podcast at the festival I started running in my neighborhood here. And, would see him at the clubs from time to time. And so when he started getting a little bit, he really started popping a couple of years back and started, being able to, call some of his own shots or whatever. He asked me, he goes, "Hey man, would you be interested in going on the road with me from time to time?" And I was like, "Yeah, man." He's like, "All right, cool, let's make it happen." So it was me and a handful of other guys who, we I was getting like one weekend a month from him. And really enjoyed watching him, grow in popularity during that period of time. And he's a guy too who, man, I really like watching his and puts a lot of thought into stuff. So in the green room, he's always open to feedback and vice versa. He'd watch your set and be like, "Hey man, it'd be fun." So just a real fun guy to talk shop with and whatever. And then, we're also pretty perfect for hanging together because we both have families, so and we're both very social. So we both like going out and having a beer with the fans, but at the same time, neither one of us are into like going to a nightclub at 3 a.m. with loud music. We just want to drink beers and meet cool people. Like we don't want to party or anything like that,
No, I'm the same way. Find me a cool little chill dive bar to have a few cocktails with afterwards. The last thing I want is loud and stupid.
Yeah, man.
After a show, I'm like, no, I don't have the time or the patience for this.
Yeah. So anyways, I just think we made a lot of sense, and we became friends. So then when he started doing theaters, then that's where, it really ramped up. And he was like, "Hey, would you want to do theater dates with me?" And I'm like, "Of course." So
why would I want to do that?
So a couple guys, Jesus Trejo and Shane Torres. And now sometimes Steve Fury comes. So it's always kind of a combination of those guys. And we're lucky that we get to go and do that and have a front row seat to a lot of really cool stuff Bert's doing.
Well, it's also super cool when you see comics take their friends on the road and do that. Like Bill Burr has a good friend of mine, Rick D'Elia, who, Bill has known forever.
Yeah.
From back in his days in Boston. And so Rick goes on the road and does some stuff with them, here on the West Coast, like in Las Vegas or up in Reno or something like that too. So it's, it's cool when you see those relationships continue beyond, a comedy club scope.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, I think a lot of headliners, I think it's evolved because I think back in the day, a lot of them didn't want to take the spots away from local guys, or maybe the pay just wasn't enough to bring your own opener. And then as time went on, I think actually, to be honest with you, I think a lot of local comics screwed it up for themselves because if you're not a good hang, if you're a headliner who comes in for the weekend and it's a crapshoot on what kind of a person you're going to be forced to hang out with and spend time with in the green room, and it's a detriment to doing your job. It's a lot just more peace of mind to go, I'm going to bring a guy who I know is reliable, is going to do, a good job with jokes, is going to not do the same jokes that they've been doing for 6 months at this same club,
Sure.
So I think that, I think that that's maybe been an evolution in the comedy world where a lot of local comics might have screwed it up for themselves.
Well, because you spend so much time on the road and you're in a hotel and then you go to the gig, and like the gig is the fun part of the job. And so when you are forced to work with coworkers that are douchebags, You're like, you know what? If I can bring my own coworkers, I'm going to bring my own coworkers.
Well, not even if, let's even say the local comic's a great person and a joy to work with. Normally they have a day job or responsibilities, so they can't meet you for lunch.
Right.
So now you're just by yourself all day,
No, exactly. It's worked out fantastic for you with this relationship with Bert Kreischer. Now so I'm talking to mutual friends of ours, Forrest Shaw, John Wynn, and all of a sudden it comes up, Dave Williamson, pitmaster. And I went, what really? So I was clicking on and I was looking at some of your stuff and I saw some of your, you shaved because you had that Tommy Lee Jones, not Tommy Lee Jones, the Harrison Ford, the fugitive beard kind of going there with the bandana and everything. And I'm like, all right, this is pretty badass. So you have taken your obsession with barbecuing and you have tied it into a comedy show.
Yeah.
Instead of me trying to explain this, you explain this to me. I want to hear it from you.
Well, the barbecue thing from the beginning, I wish I could take credit as being smart, but it just organically and authentically, honestly, just started happening where I've just been a big fan of barbecue my whole life and love eating it. And so I'd always search it out when I was on the road. Right. And when I moved to LA, I started getting angry when I'd go on the road and get such great barbecue. And then we'd go eat here in LA. And I'd just be like, this sucks. I'm like, I'd get mad. I'd be like, why would you invest in a barbecue restaurant if you're not going to do it right? And my wife would be like, she was getting mad at me because she was like, why are you surprised? She's like, why do you even keep going to barbecue restaurants in LA if you're just going to get angry? It's like I expected them to. I just kept hoping they'd like figure it out, So finally one day I just got mad and I go, I'm teaching myself. And I went to Home Depot and bought a cheap smoker that day. And I started watching YouTube clips and I was shitty at it for a long time, but I was obsessed. Like you said, it was a hobby I became obsessed with, just like, what we were talking about earlier with playing guitar or comedy. And so, I was just cooking meat like 4 times a week and we couldn't even eat it all. I'm just giving it away to neighbors because it's just like practice,
Sure.
And then, now years later, there's a lot of great places to eat barbecue in LA, but that's kind of evolved with me learning as well. And so I started noticing as I started posting this stuff on Instagram, that's all people wanted to talk to me about was I'd go out to the Improv and normally like the cliche conversation you'd have with your fellow comedians was like, hey, what's up, man? You been on the road lately? You going to do a spot tonight? What's good? But it turned into, Dave, I saw your Instagram the other day. How long does it take to cook those ribs that you cooked? Where do you buy that stuff from? What sauce do you, people just wanted to talk barbecue with me. And I was like, happy to do it. I'm like, yeah, this is fun talking barbecue. I love it. And I'm like, oh, I just learned how to do this. I just learned how to do that. So I was like, man, I go, if people want to talk barbecue with me, I go, selfishly, I should just start a podcast. So the podcast was very selfish because not only did it give me a reason to talk barbecue with my friends and just in general, but when I'd go on the road, it gave me an excuse to reach out to the local barbecue restaurants and the local barbecue personalities and then learn from that. I'm still learning at that point, right? I'm still learning today. But, it's just it gives you a reason to reach out to them. And through it, man, I've gotten to hang out with some of the most, respected pitmasters and restaurateurs in the country just because I hit them up and said, hey, I'm doing a comedy show in your city and I'd love to come by your restaurant for lunch. And then they're like, yeah, I'll sit down with you. I usually get food for free that way.
Hell yeah.
And I get to tour the pit rooms and, the kitchen and everything. So it's just been a blast. And so as I've gotten known for this, and it really leaned into it during the pandemic, once all the tour dates shut down, I'm like, well, I'm leaning into barbecue. I've built a little fan base in the barbecue community. So what you're talking about, the tour I just went on, I knew I was going to get vaccinated earlier in the tiers here in California because I coach water polo is another one of my passions. And I got a letter telling me that California considers water polo coaches essential educators. So I go, yeah. jackpot. I was like, all right, water polo. So I was like one of the first tiers to get vaccinated, and I didn't have anything on my calendar till August. So I go, I really want to get out on the road. But now I found out everyone was trying to get on the road, and all the comedy clubs were very competitive. And I'm like, I miss the old days. Like when I went on the road in 2012 with my family in the RV, it was the strongest I'd ever been as a comic because I was headlining, even if they were shitty B rooms, I was still headlining them 4 or 5 times a weekend. And I was a year straight, Derek, every weekend.
Yeah.
So the reps were there doing a lot of time. So I go, I want to go kind of capture that again. So I was like, how do I replicate that tour? And I'm like, well, I got this barbecue thing going on. And I really wanted to go to the Memphis in May Barbecue Festival. Everyone on my podcast kept telling me, you got to come. We're going to be there. It's a blast. So I go, maybe I go to show together as an excuse to go to the thing. And I'm talking to a guy who I'm interviewing a dude who owns a barbecue restaurant in Memphis. And he goes, do a show at my barbecue restaurant. It's down the street from the festival. I have a room with the whole music set up. You could do a show there. That's a great idea. I hit up 2 other cities nearby or barbecue restaurants that I know the guys. I go, can I do a show at your restaurant? And that'll be like a little weekend run. And they're like, that's an awesome idea. So then I mentioned it on my podcast, and then I mentioned it on Instagram, and now people are reaching out to me. And now next thing I know, I have 2 months booked up doing comedy shows in barbecue restaurants. So it just, and then I talked to a company that's always been real cool to me, Bear Mountain Barbecue. They make pellets for pellet smokers. And they're like, we're going to sponsor this. How can we support you? Next thing I know, I got 2 months booked up. I bought a travel trailer. I put my picture on the side of it, holding up beef ribs and all my social media stuff.
I love that.
I put together a format where, I do an hour material, just, working out my hour. And then I bring the pitmaster up at the end or the restaurant owner, whoever. And then we do a barbecue Q&A, right, with the audience. So a lot. It was the fun thing because the audience was into it, man. They're all asking questions about comedy. They're asking questions about owning a restaurant. They're asking recipe questions, sauce questions. So that was so fun to me. Some of the shows went over 2 hours because people just kept asking questions.
Oh yeah, and they love having people there, and they love talking to you and talking to the guy who runs the joint, and they love barbecue, and they obviously had a great time watching the show, which is fantastic. What has been the biggest disaster road gig involving this new pitmaster comedy angle? Because I can see, because I look at this and I see people hear the success of this. They go, "Oh, cool! Dave put together 3 back-to-back shows. Everything went fantastic. The pitmaster came up, and we're all drinking and licking barbecue sauce off each other. Life is happy." But people have got to know that if I'm completely off base, but in my head, all I'm thinking is all the things that can go wrong. I don't know why, but in my head, I don't know why I'm picturing like your trailer tipping or your smoker blowing up.
Yeah. I feel what you're saying. And by the way, I brought 2 friends with me. There's this boyfriend and girlfriend, right, named Garen and Autumn, who I've met over the past year. And they were film students at Arizona State University. And they were fans of mine who hit me up because they're going to do a student film about barbecue. And they wanted some information. And so I was like, hey, man, I really respect that you guys are doing that. And we started doing Zoom calls where I was helping them with it. And then they came out to shows I was doing it. Anyways, we became friends. And so they were graduating. And I said, hey, man, can I bring you guys on the road with me? Would you want to go for an adventure for 2 months? So they said yes. So we filmed the whole thing. So I tell you that to tell you this. I was okay with something going wrong because that makes great content.
Yes. So
if you get a flat tire or if you roll into a show late or traffic or whatever, then at least if you get content out of it, you're like, hey, man, it wasn't a total loss,
Right.
But with that said, I got to tell you, man, things just kind of worked out on this trip. And I think it had to do with the attitude of the tour. Whereas normally you really want everything to go right. But in this new world, I think everyone was just fucking happy to be doing something. And they knew the rawness and the grassroots effort of the tour. So if the show didn't start on time, nobody cared. If the setup wasn't perfect, nobody cared. Everyone was in this mindset, and plus barbecue and beer and comedy kind of played a laid back vibe. Anyways, I think I think the biggest hurdle, honestly, was one of the shows. A lot of people. It was an earlier show out on a deck of this one barbecue restaurant that's very family friendly. So a lot of people brought their kids with them.
Oh,
so it was like an outdoor show. It rained all day in Colorado. It was very humid, so I'm sweating bullets.
Ugh.
Right? And then there's just
yeah, and you're probably barbecuing too.
Yeah, there's
you're standing in front of a smoker or next to a grill, and now you're standing in humidity.
I had a lot of barbecue in my pores. Let's put it that way. And there's 15 kids running around. Like, it's one thing if the kids are off in the corner playing, but they're like in the front row. So it's fine. Like my act's pretty clean, and I'm fine with it. It just made me have to work that day, you know? Like, I couldn't just act and shoot the shit. I had to like think about every word that came out of my mouth, you know? So I would say that was the biggest hurdle as far as the show, but everything else was fine, man. Like, gas prices, there was that gas shortage right at the beginning of the whole pipeline hack. So I'm like 3 days into the trip, and then that happens, and I'm just like, oh. So gas prices in general really killed me. So the finances, I think, were a challenge. But as far as, man, everything going, I can't complain, because anything that went wrong could have gone way more wrong, and we got to all the shows, and nobody got COVID on the trip. And we made it through, you know?
Well, and the fact that you found a couple people that legitimately were excited about doing this, it wasn't like you went on Craigslist and found a couple knuckleheads that were just trying to make a buck or two. These people genuinely knew you, they liked you, they believed in the product, and they thought it was going to be fun. And the fact that you found a couple that were like, here's 2 months on the road with this knucklehead and his trailer. Let's do this.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes for a great story.
Matchup for sure. It was very serendipitous. And on Instagram, when I was promoting it on podcasts and then on Instagram, people were as interested in them as me, because they were like, wait, who are these people that just agreed to go with you for 2 months? Like, they became characters of the tour themselves, you know?
Well, I was excited about asking this because, again, mutual friend of ours, John Wynn, was telling me, he goes, yeah, man, he goes, Williamson, he's got a trailer, and he's got 2 people with him. And I went, did he know these people? And he goes, yeah, I think they were friends, you know? So John didn't give me all the information. So in the back of my head, I'm thinking these are like a couple interns that had no clue what they were getting themselves into. They're like, I just need a credit, and I can't go to school right now. I'm done with the Zoom shit, you know, get me out of here. So the fact that this ended up evolving the way that it did is really, really cool.
You know, it's kind of full circle of what we were talking about, man. They're just two people in their early 20s who just graduated school and were in a position in life to say, why not? Let's go for it. And I hope, and I'm going to do everything I can to keep them working and recommend them for people and help them get jobs here in LA, because they're moving here now.
Right.
Because just like where I said, you know, I was the guy who was bussing tables, and, you know, we were talking about people who grind to look, they could have easily been like, no, I have to stay home and stare at my computer screen and send resumes out for a job. But I think that they're more likely to get a job if they can go into an interview and go, hey, I just got done touring around the country with a comedian for 2 months, you know?
That is so cool. I'm so happy that worked out as well as it did. Now, you've got your business background, you have a rub that is out.
Yeah.
You have a rub. You can find it on your website, DaveWilliamsonComedy.com, which, by the way, you can follow Dave on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram. What else do you do?
Instagram is the main thing I'm active on. I mean, obviously I'm on all the socials, but I my next goal is I'm going to start I have a YouTube channel and it's all my comedy stuff, but I'm going to start a new Meet Dave one to put all my barbecue content on. So be on the lookout for that. I'm going to start that up here this week. So
sell me your products. Sell me the rub.
All right. I have a bottle. Here, let me grab the bottle. It's right
here. We go. All right, cool.
Here, let me grab it. I should have had it ready already.
I'm assuming that your artwork is a little bit better than the Sweet Baby Dave's that I put together here with your name written in a Sharpie on there.
Oh, my label is aggressive, dude. I went hardcore cheeseball Miami Dave with it, right? There it is.
Oh, a little closer to the camera. Oh, I love that. Hang on. Oh, look at that. You can go to your website and find it. Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
that is cool. Again, on your website, DaveWilliamsonComedy.com. What is what's the same?
It's got my story right there, and then it's got me holding a podcast mic and a beer, and you know, I always love the Miami colors. That's my roots, you know.
Sure.
That's kind of my vibe. And so the ingredients, to give you the pitch, I think the best rubs, especially for barbecue stuff, is very simple, right? So even if you only go salt and pepper, that's all you really need. But you got to have specific salt and pepper. You can't just take your table salt because it'll burn off on a long cooking for 12 hours. You need something a little thicker, right? So you need kosher salt and coarse pepper, and then just mix it up, right? Now you can throw all kinds of other stuff in there to give it some color or give it some flavor, but a good base of salt and pepper on barbecue is the most important thing. Now when you're talking
barbecue versus smoking, because that's different.
I'm talking about smoking something on the smoker for a very long time, and you want to put something on it to give it flavor, but also give it a nice bark. So you want a nice thick, right? A little crispy bark, you know, on the outside. Yep. And then the inside is very moist and soft, and it just all melts in your mouth, right? You want a little salt and peppery crust on the outside. That's what we call the bark. So I felt so you know, like a comedian's only doing comedy for a year, and they are like, oh, I got my new album, and you're like, pump your brakes, bro, right? Sure. You shouldn't be having an album or selling T-shirts yet. Like, just worry about comedy. You know what I'm saying? Well, I don't want to be that guy in the bar. I respect pitmasters and barbecue guys way too much. I don't want to be that guy in the barbecue world. Be like, well, I'm an expert. You should buy shit from now. I've been doing it for 5 years, right? So I was a little hesitant to do anything like this. But I had so many fans hit me up constantly about what kind and I kept telling people, I'll give you the ingredients, I'll tell you to do it. And I just realized people don't want to do it themselves all the time. They just want to buy something, right? So finally I was like, all right, make a rub. Because I was giving them links to go buy a rub. I'm like, I'm making money for other people, you know? I'm like, because people are begging me to tell me what I could buy. So I'm like, well, I'm going to make a rub and sell it myself. It'll be fun merch to sell after shows, you know?
Right.
And you know, I think the thing that I do feel comfortable calling myself an expert in, you know, is that I'm an expert at cooking on the road. All right. I'm really good at cooking barbecue in general, but like I said, I don't feel comfortable like patting myself on the back yet on that, because these restaurant guys are at next level, pumping it out at volume. But I can tell you wholeheartedly, up against anyone in the world, I know I'm very good at coming up with a good product, cooking outside of a tour bus or at my relative's house with a borrowed smoker, or with my little travel smoker I had on the back of my trailer that I just went around the country for 2 months, right? So when I go on the road, I can't bring a whole cabinet of spices and stuff to be like, oh, today I feel like this, or this dish would be good with this. So what I normally do is I make a vat of spices, right? I put something together, and then I can use that for everything. So if I'm going to smoke something on the smoker and I need a rub to make a bark, I use this mixture. If I'm going to cook a steak, if I'm going to cook eggs, if I'm going to have a salad, even anything that I have on the road, I just use that same vat of stuff to give it flavor, right? And so that's what I did. I put together something that's an all-purpose rub that you could use to make bark on your barbecue. Or if you're not into smoking meat, you know, and you're not doing like traditional barbecue, briskets or ribs, but you do just like to make burgers or steaks or cook eggs at your house, you can still use this, just like you would use a Montreal steak seasoning or salt and pepper. So that's the pitch.
Now, does this have, and it's a great pitch. Now, you're obviously from South Florida, so is there a little bit of South Florida magic in there, like some ground up OxyContin or some black tar heroin or some cocaine, you know, stuff like that?
Yeah, cocaine and salt from the gutters after it rains a little bit, and the whole city floods. It's got sweat from the humidity, human sweat.
It has Cuban sweat extracted from Cuban workers in August in Miami. That is the magic in the Meet Dave Meet Dave Bro. What is your signature dish? What is your signature dish? What do people go, you know what? This is the best that I have ever had, blank.
I mean, I think the thing I like doing the most and that I think I do a good job consistently is just pork ribs. Mm-hmm. Pork ribs are the thing that got me really intrigued with barbecue in the first place, because my wife and I both really enjoy them, always have our whole life. And for years, you know, my wife's a good cook. We could never make good pork ribs at home, right? And we tried crock pot, we tried the oven, we tried the grill, we tried a combination
of process.
those things. Yeah, we could never pull it off. So when I started eating such good ribs at barbecue restaurants, I'm like, it must be smokers. Smokers are the key. So that was one of my big. I think brisket is always a showstopper. But if I had to name one thing, I think that my favorite thing to cook for people is beef ribs, the big Fred Flintstone beef ribs, because they're not easy to buy everywhere, and they're just aesthetically so like jarring. It's just like it's a showstopper. It's the headliner, you know, if you cook a bunch of stuff.
It's like when you go to the fair and you see the big turkey leg.
Yeah. And
under any other circumstance, you would never buy some big Henry VIII turkey leg and go walking around gnawing on this thing before you get in the tilt-a-whirl. So the fact that you have this monster Fred Flintstone piece of ribs is just that's like, wow, okay, this is really badass. Now, I know from going to barbecue competitions, because I always love going to those things. I always love going to barbecue festivals. Huge competition with this. Is it the same as comedy? I mean, any fights?
Dude,
that break out?
There's so many similarities where it's like, you know, it's hard to be like you're judging, but what are you really judging on? It's like your particular taste of the judge. You might like something a little hotter, so it's kind of hard. Like, you know, like same in comedy when it's like, yeah, there's a winner. They pick the winner of the competition, but it's all subjective, you know. Right. So I do think it's a lot like comedy in the fact that everyone's friends and everyone's pulling for each other. But if somebody beats you, there's a little bit of jealousy in the back, and you're like, oh, fuck that guy, you know, like, you know. So yeah, it does walk that line of camaraderie, but also jealousy and competition, because, you know, you put your heart and soul in it, you know, and they're both great. They can both be great. There doesn't have to be a winner and loser, but yeah, it's really funny, man. I went to the Memphis in May when I went to on this trip. I immersed myself in it for 3 days, right? And it did remind me a lot of going and competing in comedy festivals where there's all the camaraderie, the partying, but also the seriousness of you're there to do a job, and you know, the winners and the losers and how they, like, you know, feel afterwards. And yeah, it was super interesting. It's funny you bring that up. And by the way, can I tell you, the Memphis in May is it is one of the biggest, if not considered the biggest barbecue competition / festival in the country. And everyone's got their own tent and party going on, their own little headquarters, with their own little private parties going on. There's like hundreds of them, right? And people bring in bands, DJs, artists, strippers. I mean, there's just all kinds of different stuff going on at different parties.
Strippers? Yeah,
dude. People do. There's going on everywhere, right? And so everyone told me, to their recollection and knowledge, right? This is been going on for 50 years or something. I was the first comedian to perform comedy at the Memphis in May Barbecue Festival in May this past year.
Congratulations.
And nobody knew how it was going to. People were like, oh my God. They're like, dude, it's like chaos everywhere. You're going to do comedy. And it went so great, Derek, that now I got everyone going, dude, you should come do our tent next year. You should come do our tent. So I think next year I'm going to go back and just do gigs all down the line at different people's tents. Because one guy took a chance and said, hey, man, you can do it at my tent. I'll hire you to come in, you know?
Dude, I love to cook. I would love to somehow figure out a weekend where I'll fly out there, and wherever you're at, we'll cook, we'll laugh our ass off, we'll drink, and do some show. I think that would be a blast. I would love to do that.
Anytime you're in town, let me know. I live close to LAX. I'm very easy to visit here. And then also, let's put together one of these shows in Vegas, man. You could come be on the lineup.
That would be. That would be fantastic. I'm surprised now because you look at the schedule and people are very, you know what? First off, I'm going to go back. Are there any recipe thieves? Is there any Carlos Mencias of barbecue where you bite into their rib and you go, this is exactly the same as mine, you piece of human garbage?
You know, I think back in the day, people really guarded their secrets, but now in the world of YouTube and podcasts and stuff like that, people are a lot more open to sharing their processes. And it's like, hey man, if you can repeat it, good for you, go ahead.
Sure.
But you know, if there's something kind of special that they do that makes their thing different, they'll maybe keep that a little closer to the, you know, a secret ingredient here or there, or something in the process they do. Then they might just kind of keep that to themselves. But yeah, otherwise, man, in general, the barbecue guys are actually pretty cool about sharing, you know, a lot of information.
Well, I like whenever I go to those barbecue festivals, I always like going to the one that's not the crazy layout. Like there's always a couple where it's just some monster awning and like 35 smokers, and it's a semi truck that they stole off of the Metallica tour. And it's got a big happy pig, which I don't know why any pig is smiling at a barbecue festival. There is no pig with a happy face happening at a barbecue festival. I like going to the guy that's a little more subdued.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? Because I always end up seeing a longer line at that guy's place. And to me, I'm like, you know what? This guy spent less time putting together the cartoon pig and a little more time on the food and making it the magic that barbecue is.
Hey, look, it's like comedy, man. Sometimes the guy who's got all the TV credits and all the, you know, all the bells and whistles isn't always the funniest dude or the dude you enjoyed the most on the lineup.
Right.
The guy who's legitimately just got the best jokes, you know?
Yeah.
The guy who worked a little less on the marketing and a little more on the joke writing is the one you actually end up enjoy seeing, you know?
And we could rattle off names for hours on that. We won't. But we certainly could. What you went from, I want to ask you this as we kind of wrap it up here. You went from South Florida to LA. You put together an 18-month tour to make this magic happen. You got a travel trailer. It's you, your wife, and your 2 sons.
Yeah.
Correct? And you're in this travel trailer coming out. And I remember when I ran into you here in Vegas.
Okay.
And you were kind of goofing around and you were playing water polo over at UNLV and you were working the club here, and we ended up hanging out. And I'm like, where are you standing? I go, yeah, we got a travel trailer. We're over at this RV park. And I'm like, where is there an RV park? I think it's like kind of behind Circus.
Yeah, it's a nice one. No, there's the one we'd stay at was down the strip past the airport, kind of.
Okay.
Out by, there's like a casino down off the highway out there,
South Point's down there a little bit further south of the strip.
It might be that. It might be that. Yeah, it's out that way.
Okay.
Big, beautiful RV park.
Sure.
But to be fair, I put together a 3-month tour that turned into 18 months.
So you sold this to your wife as a 3-month tour.
Man, we were in Miami and she was just kept saying like, you know, I'd quit my day job and it 3 years had passed. And she's like, what's the next step? What's the next step? Because, you know, I was working the road from Miami and that was getting increasingly difficult. And so I go, well, I think we need to move to LA or New York. And I went to the World Series of Comedy in Vegas because I was really leaning into festivals at the time. I was trying to accelerate my networking ability to get booked.
Sure.
So I saw, I had a little bit of money in the bank still from my earlier years in the car business and severance and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, look, I'm going to invest in applying to these comedy festivals. And if I go and I don't make any money that weekend, I am going to hopefully get booked if I do a good job. And it paid off. So anyways, I went to that World Series of Comedy. Like 500 people apply every year. 101 people get invited to Vegas. And I ended up coming in 3rd place the one year, the first year I went, right? And I didn't see that coming at all, but it happened. And you get work. That's what you win, is all these clubs around the country. Then you have like a direct line to their booker. Well, a lot of people weren't taking the work actually because it was only promised feature work. and it was smaller clubs that maybe don't pay enough to where a lot of people wouldn't fly in for that work, right?
Sure.
Well, I took the list and I shotgunned an email out to all of them and said, hey, I'm more of a headliner than a feature, which was stretching it at the time, right? I was maybe headlining some of the bonkers bowling alleys in Daytona at the time, right? I go, I'm more of a I'm more of a headliner than a feature. I go, but I'll come work your club no matter what. I just want to work your club. So then maybe a percentage of them hit me back. And then the ones that hit me back, I said, hey, if you book me this particular weekend, you don't have to give me a hotel. And a lot of them jumped on that. So it started booking it up. And so I told my wife when I was at that festival, another comic was traveling for like 2 weeks with his family in an RV. And I sold my wife on that idea. And I go, why don't we try to do that and then end up in LA and we'll see if we can find out. So it was just an idea. And just like this tour that I just put together, it just snowballed where I started booking up the work. I found someone to rent my house. I found a travel trailer to buy. And I go, holy shit, I think we're going to do this, right? So we did it. And I had garage sale. I sold everything I owned. And I found a renter. And my kids were like 2 and 4 at the time. So they were young and very, flexible. And we got in and we took 3 months. And then I got into the San Francisco Comedy Festival. And I made it to the finals of that, which takes like a month. So that turned into 4 months. And then we pulled into LA. And my wife looked at me and said, we're just getting good at this. And I'm having a blast. Like, I wouldn't mind continuing to do it. So during that trip, I got booked to do a show called Nick Mom Night Out. It was a show Nickelodeon was doing at the time. And so I left my family in the RV in Vancouver and I flew to New York for one night to film that. And then at the wrap party that night, I was talking to someone at the bar and telling her, oh, I can't do any more. She was asking me to do more spots around town. I go, no, I left my family in an RV in Vancouver and I'm headlining the club there this weekend. I got to get back. So she's like, what are you talking about? I told her the whole story. She gives me a business card. She's the VP of programming. And she's like, it's really interesting. Keep in touch with me. So when my wife said she wants to keep going with the tour, I emailed that lady, can I send a pitch? She goes, yeah, sure. So I sent her a pitch for a blog. I sent her a pitch for a reality show. And I sent her a pitch for a web series. She goes,
this was the lady who gave you the card in New York. Okay.
Yeah. She goes, I like your idea for a reality show, but we only have the budget for a web series. So I sold it to them. I booked up work going back across the country and back. So I was doing the clubs, but at the same time, I'm doing home movies and I'm sending them my home movies to make little 2-minute, like little web series,
Yeah.
So I'm getting a paycheck from them too. So anyways, it just like things fell into place. It kept working out and we were loving doing it. So we ended up doing it for over a year. And then we got back to LA and my kids were like, 5 or 6 years old at the time. So it's like, oh, they're ready to like be enrolled in soccer and do more, we needed an address at that point, So then we found this house in El Segundo that we still live in and the community we love here. So it was one of the, it could have gone south real fast, Derek. My wife could have left me weak too, for sure.
Oh, you have married an angel of mercy. She did the Lord's work on that run.
Yeah, it stands true to this day. Like it's definitely she's been a big proponent to any success I've ever had.
So was there anybody in the family that would be most likely to get a gun and kill everyone in the RV about halfway through that trip?
Well, my kids were a little young for that at the time.
But they're from South Florida. They're practically born with a gun in their hand.
I think the most danger that we were in on that trip was actually I felt safe the entire trip, right? But then we get to LA and we're staying in an RV park near the beach. I thought it'd be a nice place, right? No problem. Sure. But it was a time of year that there wasn't really a lot of people that were camping on a Tuesday. But for whatever reason, one of the only other trailers was 2 spots down from us. And it was I like Googled how to spot a meth lab. And I'm going down the list and I'm like, yep. There's a meth lab next to us, right? So I had to call it into the police and rat them out. And then I told my family, we're going to Disneyland today. We're not coming back till tonight. And we went to Disneyland and we came back and they were gone. But that was the most that was the most scared I was like the 3 days we lived next door to a meth lab. And the people were fine. They were nice. It was just like it was like a 15-year-old kid that was running it though. And I was like scared he was going to blow us all up.
DaveWilliamsonComedy.com. Follow him online. Follow him on social media. Buy his albums. Check out the podcast, Meet Dave. See the barbecues. Get the meat rub. The meat rub is right there on the website. Grab it. I'm gonna snag some of that. I'm gonna put it on everything.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, let me know what you think.
I'm gonna put it on. I can't wait. No, I love cooking and I love barbecue. My girlfriend is from Texas, so she loves barbecue. I mean, there's that elitist pockets of the country where they think their barbecue is the best, like your North Carolina barbecue versus Texas versus Oklahoma versus Kansas. I mean, so is there anything? Man,
this has got a lot of pepper flakes in it too, because I think pepper flakes. I think they look cool when you put them on something. But this, the show that we're doing right now is A Drink with Derek, and something I didn't think about or do on purpose, but ended up being very fruitful was makes a pretty good Bloody Mary, buddy.
Whoa!
A little sprinkle in your Bloody Mary.
Yes, you sold me. Now which one here? Because I'm a huge Irish whiskey fan. As we end here, what creation of yours pairs well with Irish whiskey?
Well, what comes to mind is I actually really like smoking salmon, and when I smoke salmon, I take whiskey and honey, and then a little bit of spice, and put it in a bowl together, and whip it until it makes like a nice little drizzle, and and then I pour it on the top of the salmon and make a glaze, and then put it back in the fridge for like an hour, and then I put it on the smoker. And what that does is it kind of locks the moisture in, so that the salmon just comes out with that nice little honey whiskey flavor to it. But it locks the moisture in too, so it's delicious.
Whiskey, honey, a little bit of the meat rub. I can put that on there. So whisk that together, put it on the salmon, fridge for an hour, smoke it, happiness.
Good to go.
Done. Dave, you're awesome, man. Congratulations with everything. I'm so happy for you. The podcast, Meet Dave, grab his rub. That sounded so wrong. Go to his website. Go to his website, DaveWilliamsonComedy.com. Follow him on there. Check out the podcast. Good luck to you, buddy. We'll see you soon, my friend.
Listening to A Drink with Derek. Find out when Derek is appearing near you by checking out DerekRichards.com. See you next time for A Drink with Derek.